Welcome back to a brand new episode of Your Wealth and Beyond. I'm your host, Andrew Raffel, and today marks an incredible milestone, our 100th episode. When we started this journey, our focus was primarily on financial advice, helping individuals navigate the complexities of wealth management and retirement planning. But like many great adventures, this podcast has evolved into something far more meaningful. Over these 100 episodes, we've witnessed a remarkable transformation. What began as conversations about investment strategies and retirement planning has blossomed into a platform celebrating the entrepreneurial spirit. I've had the privilege of sitting down with visionaries and risk takers and innovators who've shared not just their successes, but their struggles, pivots, and breakthrough moments. This evolution mirrors my own journey. As a financial advisor and founder of Baintree Wealth Advisors, I've always believed that true wealth extends far beyond the balance sheet. It's about building something meaningful, creating impact, and leaving a legacy. And that's what our guests embody. They're not just business owners, they're dreamers and doers who've turned their passions into thriving enterprises. Looking ahead, we're more excited than ever because we're committed to bringing you the stories that inspire, the strategies that empower, and the insights that challenge the conventional thinking. Our goal is to continue building this community of ambitious entrepreneurs, sharing the kind of wisdom that you won't find in any business school textbook. And speaking of unconventional wisdom, one of my favorite episodes perfectly encapsulates this spirit. As a lifelong Deadhead, I was thrilled to host Brian Mohr a few years ago in a fascinating discussion about the business lessons we can learn from the Grateful Dead. And that's why I'm in this shirt. They built a multi-million dollar enterprise over the years through touring and merchandise alone. Some of the things we go through is how they've built that loyal community, how they focus on the experience, the freemium model, and staying true to your brand. So this episode exemplifies what we're all about. Finding business insights in unexpected places, challenging assumptions, and learning from those who dare to do things differently. Whether you're a Dead fan or not, the lessons about brand building, community engagement, and conscious capitalism are invaluable for any entrepreneur. So as we embark on our next 100 episodes, I want to thank you, our listeners, for being part of this journey. Your support has helped transform this podcast into a vibrant platform for entrepreneurial wisdom and inspiration. Let's keep growing, learning, and building together. Without further ado, let's dive into this podcast with Brian Mohr. And welcome back to another episode of Your Wealth and Beyond. Welcome to 2020. This is our first show, and I am super excited to make it live and to have on a wonderful guest who I'm getting to know this morning. Brian Mohr, welcome to the Your Wealth and Beyond podcast.
Thank you very much. And I just have to say that you said wonderful guest. You don't know that to be true. This could be an utter disaster.
You know what? I'm thinking high level here that we're going to hit this a home run, but you're right. But I digress. So Brian is the founder of Mohr Impact Group.
Yep.
A consulting firm.
Yes.
Focused on what?
It's focused on organizations that want to unlock the potential of their people by really honing in on the importance of human connection in the workplace.
And I think in today's world where we're so connected technologically,
yeah,
but I feel like we're so disconnected with our relationships.
It's so true. You know, the amount of time that we spend tethered to some sort of an electronic device.
Hold on, let me check the time.
For good reason, right? I mean, I think technology has brought so many advancements, so much efficiency, so much productivity, and it's great. It does a lot of great things, but what are the consequences? And are we now bordering, and I would say yes, into a world where technology is actually becoming a surrogate for real human connection? And we're social creatures. And so how do we make sure that as we continue to focus on doing more with less, that we don't lose the importance and, frankly, the need that we have as human beings to feel connected to one another?
Yeah, and I think that's so important in today's world. So working with the executives, the business owners, and the employees,
yep,
and having that higher vision together, that they're on a mission to not just help their clients, not just help bring in revenue, but have that purpose. And especially, the millennials, they really want to have that purpose. It's not so much about making money.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting. The millennials, I think, get a lot of credit and maybe take a lot of flack for bringing this more balanced approach to the business world. But at the end of the day, I do think that all generations were wired quite similarly. The millennials, I think, is just the first sort of large group that had the courage to lean with their deeply held beliefs of the way things could be or the way they want things to be. And my hope is, and I think it's starting to bear out, is that all of the generations are like, hey, these younger folks are pretty damn smart. Maybe we should listen to what they're saying, and I think they are.
Yeah, half of the staff at Main Street Wealth Advisors are millennials, and they get in earlier than I do. Work 7:30, 8 o'clock, but they have that work ethic, that passion, because they have a common goal, which is helping clients. But we've built a good culture.
Yeah.
So we could spend this whole podcast talking about that, but we're going to change things up a little bit. And one of the reasons I brought Brian on through a very good friend, Adam Goodman. Where they're both very passionate about the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And today we're actually going to go through some of the lessons that we can learn on the business side as well as marketing from what the Grateful Dead, what they've done over the course of their history, starting in the mid-'60s, and some of the things we can learn and take from what they've done to create the culture, to create the business mindset, to change things up, to have that organized chaos. So who better to have on than Brian Mohr, who you've been to 52 shows prior to Jerry dying?
52 prior to Jerry, his untimely, too soon passing. Yes, yeah.
Wow. So
it was a lot of good times had, most of which I remember, some I don't.
Which are some of probably the better ones, right?
Story for another time.
And as you were obviously young at the time. Some of the things as you were going to those shows and absorbing it all, you maybe weren't able to take full advantage of what you were experiencing at that time.
Without question. I mean, it's the gift of hindsight. Being the gift that it is fun to look back and reflect and start to put the pieces of that puzzle together.
So we think about this business ship that they built, right?
Yep.
And now we look at books have been written on it, right? Courses have been taught in college. So I think when we talk through on some of those main areas, we can look at whether it was the 60s, the 80s, or here in the 2020s, we can take a lot of what they did and how they developed their brand, right? How they developed the affinity to their fans. And one of the things I think if we first start thinking about is content, right? They were one of the first to think of things, right, and say, you know what, we're gonna give away our content. So let's talk through a little bit of that, of how they saw the ability for the fans to start recording the shows.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an amazing sort of element of the whole community that they created and the business that they created that they just sort of fell into. And I think a lot of it stemmed from their mindset that, they're artists and they go out there and they create their art. And one of a very small group of bands out there that changes up what they do every single night, right? As much has been written about how they don't go out and just do the same show over and over and over the course of a tour. Every night's different, so there's that sense of surprise and delight. Mostly good. Sometimes, they'll deliver just an absolute crap show, but that's part of the deal. And I think the philosophy of, hey, when we go out and we create our art, if somebody wants to record it, great, because when we're done with that particular piece of canvas, we're done with it, and take it, do what you want with it. And whether I don't think they were consciously thinking about, hey, if we do this and we let people record this, that's somehow going to help us continue to grow and proliferate what we're trying to do. I think it was simply just a matter of people wanting to capture the energy and the magic that was happening when it did happen, and then that just became its own sort of underground trading system where people were able to relive those memories that they had by listening to what had just happened, because there was a group of people that would throw up microphones not unlike these and just capture these shows.
And they would, provide them the space and give them sometimes the front row area there.
Yeah.
And it, as you mentioned, it created that kind of fear of missing out, that FOMO, right? Think about we're talking some of the Dead and Company shows, and if you miss a show, or if you look back to that set list and you missed that one in '93, and you're so close to going, and you missed it, and even though you can hear it, it's still that experience.
Totally.
Is what you're there for.
Totally. And it's just, anybody that's been following the band for any length of time, whether it's back in the early days or in the modern reincarnation of what it is, we all have those songs that we're dying to hear live. And so these 2-3 night stands that the band will do in any one particular city, you're just kind of walking in every night with your fingers crossed going, I hope I hear fill in the blank song, because I've heard it a gazillion times on a tape or CD or MP3 or what have you. I want to hear it live. And
on that note, and I'll kind of use that to I'm going to take off this jacket, and I feel like if this is a Dead Show podcast, we're talking about songs that we want to hear. Let me see if you can get this on there. It's Althea. So that's definitely in today's new rendition of Dead and Company. This is a song that I think Mohr's starting to play really well.
Oh, and I think it's the song that John would say is the song that brought him in to this whole Dead community. I just listened to, I think you had heard it as well because Adam shared it with us. John was on that Al Franken podcast, and I think, if my memory serves, John was talking about listening to a Neil Young Spotify, channel, and the 1980 studio recording of Althea came on from the Go to Heaven album, and that somehow was the song that pulled him in. Up until that point, you got a guy who's as unbelievable a musician and guitarist as John Mohr is, for that song to be the song to have pulled him in. It's just super interesting. Yeah. So well worn here at the podcast.
Perfect timing on that.
Yeah.
And when we think about
Atari might be a little upset, but who knows?
Hey, there were no attorneys on here. No one is even watching, so we're fine.
That is the Atari logo, right? I think it's meant. I think that's awesome.
But when we think of, let's talk about business and obviously new rendition with the evolution after Jerry died, a couple different in ways than how they started getting out there and playing.
Sure.
But two things when we think about a leader, right? And Jerry was kind of the glue that kept it all together.
Yep.
Even though as a leader, maybe he wasn't the most vocal, but he led and he was the one they looked up to. So when we lose a leader, and whether it be because they get ousted, they retire, what can a business do to ensure that the culture lives on if that leader, if that founder steps away?
I mean, I think at the most core essence of that is preserving and carrying the flag, the torch of what it is that leader, what the purpose was and how that leader manifested that purpose. Most businesses, if not all businesses, start to solve a problem, better a human condition, bring a new product or service to the world that's going to improve the lives of whomever that business is there to serve. And it's a very noble reason to start something. And so if indeed a leader, a founder, a CEO moves on from being the person that's carrying that torch, I think whomever then steps in, making sure that individual understands that not only are they being brought in to lead from a X's and O's and execution standpoint, but also that they do so with that heart and soul connectivity to what the core essence of the business exists to deliver. It's why, its purpose. It goes by lots of names, but that larger reason for being for the business, as opposed to, at least I've seen it a lot in the executive search space where I spend quite a bit of time, is, oftentimes businesses will bring a leader in because their resume and their background, their experience is a really good match for what the job calls for. but then they'll forget about that whole human connection, that heart and soul connection. That becomes the greatest accelerator of performance, is when that leader or leadership team not only can get the job done, but gets it done in a way that is perfectly aligned to the essence of the business's purpose. And the people that are being led, the followers, if we want to call them that, can feel that connection. It's not just about the X's and O's, which matter. It's about the whole thing. Yeah. It's about the X's and O's and the heart and soul, and bringing that all together.
And so, when I read back in when Jerry passed, and then kind of the infighting, right, Phil and Bobby, and
terrible.
It was one where they were just on their own path.
Yep.
And although they tried to get back together, at the end of the day, there was nobody leading that ship.
Yeah.
And even though they had the people that were wanting them to figure it out. And that happens so much in business when you get the person that's keeping maybe the egos at bay.
Yep.
And that common goal, that common mission of getting from point A to point B.
Yeah.
You lose that, and then, no matter how it's hard to replace it.
Yep.
And then we see over these last 5 years or so, one area with looking at a business, and you bring in, whether it be, I wouldn't call him the leader, but having somebody like Mohr step in to the shoes, which are impossible to actually step into, and the legion of fans that were like, no way, this John Mohr embodies a wonderland.
Right.
I can't have this guy in there. And then slowly him putting the work in, right, and showing and coming to work every day.
Yep.
And then slowly winning over the fans.
Yeah.
Again, it's not going to be perfect, but guy's a technician out on the guitar, and he's putting in the time, and now there's that comfort level where they've got something pretty good going.
They do, and it's and even prior to John coming in, even when Jerry was still alive and the band was going through its years and years of evolution, in many ways it was a leaderless band. Even though Jerry is often hoisted up on the pedestal of being the leader of the band. And maybe that's just the curse of being the lead guitarist in many bands. That becomes sort of the go-to person, that the person that sings the most often, or is the lead guitar player. In many regards, that band, the entity, is a leaderless entity. Not that there wasn't a leader, but it was an environment that they magically created where whomever had the most energy, whoever was sort of advancing what they were doing musically the fastest or with the most intensity, the band, having spent so much time together, was able to fall behind and sort of hear without words who was the person, whether it was the drummer, whether it was the keyboard player, whether it was the bass player, whether it was Jerry, whomever it was. Whomever had the most energy was the person that took the lead, and then the band was able to follow suit, and it became this super organism that the leader constantly changed. And I think what's interesting about Dead & Company in particular, you hit the nail on the head, that so many fans who loved the Grateful Dead with Jerry had a really hard time, because John is now stepping in to fill shoes of somebody who, like, they couldn't look more different, right? And here's a guy, John Mohr, who had this amazing, and still does, this amazing career as a more of a pop musician, even though he comes from the blues. I mean, he's a blues guy at his core. It's such sort of the opposite personality of what Jerry Garcia was, yet John came to it, to your point, put the work in, and recognized, I think, right out of the gate that he's just a contributor. He's not the leader. There's really no leader. And he was able to kind of figure out that this is a group of musicians that don't designate you're the leader. It's whoever is advancing the musical story furthest is the person they fall behind.
And I think companies can take that and utilize that to help become more successful.
Absolutely.
The best leader
Absolutely.
is one that lets their people.
Yeah.
And in your case, you're right. You hit it on the head. There is that every night there's a different, on a Dead & Company show, there's a different person taking the lead.
Totally.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean that opportunity inside of a team or inside of a department in business. You may have the title of department manager, whatever, the vice president of X. But as you're going through the day-to-day, the week-to-week work and working on a variety of projects and initiatives, if there's someone who really lights up and has a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of enthusiasm around a particular project initiative, just because they don't have the title of being the leader doesn't mean that they don't have the capacity to step into that role and bring people along, because they're the one that is moving the momentum, the progress furthest with the most energy.
Yeah, and as they grew, think about the counterculture in the 60s,
Yeah.
and they became, more, I wouldn't say mainstream in the 70s, but think about all the people that were helping them behind the scenes. That great documentary that came out last year really showcased a lot of that.
Yep.
Looking at, the blood, sweat, and tears that everybody felt. And that's something that, in case of business, if you've got that can help you excel to the next level.
Yep.
So when we think about social media now and this, we're so connected, but we're not connected. Thinking back to some of the successes of how we saw this culture being built from the ground up, and then became a little bit, more mainstream, and then maybe in the 80s we could say it became, some of their popular songs, they became more. But that experience, right? That experience that back then people were striving to have that experience. And now in today's world, you can almost think of them as like, that was the Facebook before Facebook, right? in the context of being able to, think about the shows as you got older, you've been able to go to shows, and then all of a sudden you're seeing a buddy that you hadn't seen in a year or since
Totally.
last summer, and then it's like boom. And we think about in today's world, what we remember like from last year, all the different days rolled in, they meld into each other. And you think about experiences, right? And in live events, those experiences live on. You think about you're remembering stuff from the 90s,
Sure.
as much as you can remember some of those shows, right?
Yeah.
But those are some of your fondest memories.
They're great, and it's interesting, that whole community, and I think it's widely misunderstood. Or perhaps unfairly pegged, right? You people who don't know what the Grateful Dead is, and hear someone speak about it, if they have no concept of what it really is, I think oftentimes, and maybe this is just a story I'm telling myself, is they'll immediately jump to, oh, that's just a band that uses drugs and you just go there to get wasted.
Drugs are bad.
And sure, there is that part of it, right? There are people who go there to do things to themselves, and that's what they're there to do. But to your point around that connection and that experience, and perhaps that being sort of a more older school Facebook, anytime you run into somebody, whether you know them or not, at a concert, and particularly at a Dead show, and any of the bands that I think sort of have created some sort of a similar community, you immediately know something about that person, or at least you can jump to a conclusion that there's a good chance that they're pretty kind, they're compassionate, they lead with a sense of love, they certainly believe that love is stronger than hate. They want to be part of this community. There's that connection piece. And I think that's, to me, one of the most beautiful things about this band and what they did, is they created a community. And you meet people before, during, after these shows, and you immediately know something about them. And it's almost an unspoken, brother sisterhood.
Yeah, you go to a show, you'll see Wall Street people. You'll back in the day in suits. You'll have doctors. You're gonna have engineers. You're gonna have blue collar. You're gonna have those that are kind of off the grid, and all getting together and just not judging.
Yeah.
And in today's world, that very rarely happens. So
Yeah.
that's the type of draw, and it's whether it be the Dead, or you look at what spawned from that, things like Fish,
Yep.
right? Who kind of took from everything the Dead did and made it their own.
Yep.
But understood the power of the
Power
the team,
community,
the power of the community,
Yep.
and treating your fans, treating them right.
Yep.
And that's you think back to this marketing. It was a marketing machine, and they were with the Dead thinking they understood. Okay, let's mailing list, right? Let's get our loyal fans. Let's get their addresses, right? There's no
Yep.
email back then, and let's push out good stuff.
Yep.
Let's push out and keep them connected. Let's make sure that the top fans are in the front row.
Yeah, totally.
And bands learn from that. Fish, now you got Widespread, you got String Cheese, all of these different bands that maybe don't sell a lot of albums, right? The Dead 94, I think they brought in over $50 million, but the majority of that's touring and
Yep.
merchandise, right?
Yep.
So they realized that from the get-go, that they're not They don't do it in the studio.
Yeah, and they never could. They never could. Even though they've got a few really good studio albums, that just was never their thing. Interestingly, it just was never their thing. But I agree.
And they realized early on, okay, we're gonna, even though it's like that organized chaos, we're gonna look like we're just kind of doing our thing and flying at the the rails of hey, we'll make it happen the next day. But they really created a company, right? And
without question,
a real company. Board of directors were them.
Yeah.
They didn't have the record company telling them what to do, and then they realized early on, that they could do really well with the merchandise.
Yep.
But then think about what they were able to do with that community. Is how many entrepreneurs did they create?
It's unbelievable.
And it's still to this day, right? I mean, it's got to be in the tens of thousands, whether somebody's selling something on Instagram now or you go to Shakedown Street and they are literally, some are just surviving to go to the next show.
Yep.
But that's what they saw from the get-go.
Hey, that's what they are choosing to do, right? Nobody's forcing anybody to do that. But yeah, it's fascinating. It is fascinating. What a study in some sort of human behavior, human psychology of what that whole thing is.
And you think, the branding of what they created, it's in line with Nike, it's in line with Apple.
Yeah.
You've got that loyal fan base that will stop at nothing to be part of that.
Yep.
And it's the same premise with all these companies that have developed and continue to evolve that brand and align themselves for hopefully the right mission. Now, as companies, as everything gets bigger, it gets more convoluted. Google, we are no evil, right? What's their saying?
Do no evil, or
right?
do no harm, or
and now they own us. Yeah. So and they really gave that give away the content, and then we became their revenue stream.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother podcast that we could get into. But it's about creating the tribe that and that's what good brands do.
100%.
And focus on them.
Find your fans and treat them really, really well.
Yeah. Love them.
Well, it's interesting too, just in the whole I think the music business. At least in the live environment, a group of artists, musicians jump on stage, and the really good ones understand that it is a symbiotic relationship with the people that are there, and that energy transfer, it's real. Yeah. It is when it happens. I was this was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. My wife and I and some friends went to the Van Buren, the music venue in downtown Phoenix area, and we saw a show, the Trey Anastasio band, the lead singer, guitar player from Phish, and he has a side band. And there were moments in that show where it's hard to put it into words, but every single person in the room, whether you had an instrument on your shoulder or you were in the audience, we were connected, which might sound goofy, crazy, whatever. This is not a drug-induced feeling. This is like 100% sober on a Tuesday night. And just everybody was on the same wavelength. There were moments where it was just undeniable that we had fallen into the groove, into this groove. I don't know what else to call it. Where you could look up on stage, you could look at the person to your left, person to your right, and it just everybody was feeling the exact same thing. Like, wow, we are in it. Yeah. And those moments, that's kind of what you live for, especially in a live music environment.
Well, the Van Buren is a perfect setting for that.
Great venue.
But you can't replicate those experiences.
No, you can't. And the band doesn't know that that's going to happen, right? That's just that's what happens when everybody is united by a common purpose. Band, audience, lighting, sound, venue, like everybody. It was just one of those moments.
Yeah, I saw Gary Clark there about a year ago.
That was great.
That was incredible.
Yeah, it's a neat room. It's a really neat room. That was the first time I'd ever been there. It's a great room.
I missed that Tuesday night. It was a rainy, cold Tuesday.
Yeah, it was. It was really, really cold.
Now I got FOMO missing out on that. So, if you were to plan your perfect show, what 5 songs would you want to hear?
Oh, wow.
Uh-oh.
Oh, man.
Oh, no. We're going there.
Plan my perfect show. All right. So I am dying to see Mr. Charlie, which is a song that got put on the back burner after Pigpen died back in the early 70s. So I never got to see that. They never played it after Pigpen died. He was one of their early.
He was one of the lead.
He was one of the originals. Yeah. Ron Pigpen McKernan. I think he died in 72, I want to say. But nonetheless, so that was one of their more bluesy songs. John has, I don't know if John brought it back, but John sings it, and he's been doing that tune. They've busted it out a few times. I love seeing St. Stephen. There's something about that song that just, to me, that is the essence of the Grateful Dead. Love seeing that. A Morning Dew, love hearing some of these tunes, although I still struggle a little bit with some of the songs, more of the ballad songs that Jerry's old man, very fragile voice, he commanded a presence over the storytelling of these songs that, Bobby's doing the best he can. And
the third song is hard to hear without.
It's just hard. There's some songs like there's that indelible mark of who's singing
Stella,
it. Yeah, Stella. I mean, there's just, What else would I be dying to hear?
And this could go back to even with Jerry, so it's. But these are all.
They're all.
You can keep going.
Yeah, I take what they give me, right? It's.
If going back to the statistics on dead, songs. What do you think beyond Space and Drums? What's the number one song they played?
Well, the one that they played the most often is Me and My Uncle. So that tune, kind of an old cowboy Bob Weir sung tune, is the song that they played in repetition the most times throughout their history. I don't know what the number is, but they played it a lot. Yeah. It's quick, fun tune. It's fun.
And I think playing in the band, they did
they did that a bunch.
Maybe they didn't even do the whole song.
Sure,
it's always just somewhere hiding in between. Different songs and so forth. I was looking, and I think I was surprised. Like top 15 or so was like Mexicali Blues. Which,
I'm sure that's up there.
Yeah, they don't. That company doesn't play that much, but that's a
fun
one.
Yeah. You're right. We haven't heard that much. Yeah.
So your whole with your career, it's been helping to place the right employee with the right employer.
Yep.
And then as you started looking at this and saying we want to focus on a purpose base of finding, what does that mean to the listener?
So kind of maybe going back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, this notion of leadership in business. I think for a really, really long time, it was the individual who had the most experience in a particular field, a particular discipline, and the human aspect of that individual leader's connectivity to the larger reason, the larger purpose, the larger why behind the business is why is it in existence, is a piece that I don't know that it got nearly as much attention as it deserves. And it's interesting, too, because if you rewind the clock back in the mid-1940s, there was a Harvard professor, his name's Elton Mayo, who is the guy that is credited with launching what became known as the human relations movement. It was one of the first individuals, academics, to say, listen, the environment the work environment, how people feel about the work is as important as all the other criteria that we have been studying up until that point. And yet here we are in 2020, and it's as if we're still figuring that out, that how people feel about the work that they do matters. Why that is, I don't know, but I think a huge part of that is the leaders, right? The old saying, the fish stinks from the head, so it's either going to smell good or it's going to smell bad. And if that leader or leadership team is authentically aligned to why the business exists, in addition to the profit motive of, hey, we got to make money. You can't run a business unless you're making money. But how you make it and the way you engage the team that is doing the work matters tremendously. So how do you as a leader really shine a bright light on not just the money-making aspect of it, but the reason why you're making the money? What is the product? What is the service? How is it helping? And maybe it's not externally that great of a product or service. Maybe you look inward and learn that as a leader, the biggest opportunity you have, and perhaps the most noble reason for your existence as a business, is to help the people who enroll and come work for you grow and learn in life, and whether they move on or not, they will have left a better person than when they came. And that's a pretty good reason to be a leader and run a business.
Wow. I mean, Adam was wrong about you. You're a lot smarter than he led on to. Wow.
Well, the fact that we both have chosen Adam as a friend, I mean, our judgment should be in question big time. I mean, he's well, you know,
that's
what?
a whole other.
That might be a whole nother episode.
And then leading into what you just said, into one of your passions is conscious capitalism.
Yep.
And that word gets thrown around quite a bit, but what does that mean? To those that haven't maybe dived into it and learned the value of it, or just maybe thought about it high level.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could spend a lot of time on this, and I'm happy to. Conscious capitalism is simply a way of looking at the capitalistic system that's far more aligned to where we are in the human journey today. And for whatever reason, the capitalistic model has devolved into a very short-term shareholder-only mentality. And I think a lot of that's driven by the businesses that we put up or that captures our news media and the attention of the news, as well as Wall Street, right? We quarterly, and you've got activist investors, and you've got just this drive to make money. And I'm not an anti-profit, anti-money guy. I have to make as much as you want. But there's a way to go about doing it that can benefit all of the stakeholders, not just the shareholders. So how do leaders today who are running for-profit businesses look at the opportunity that they have, not only to deliver a great service, a great product, and make money, but do so in a way that pays attention to all of the stakeholders that their business needs, the ecosystem of suppliers and vendors in the community, the employees, the clients, the investors, right? You've got this big ecosystem of participants in the business's success. The business can't do it alone. So how do leaders recognize the impact and the ripple effects of what they do and how they do it, so that they are doing their best to create winning opportunities for everyone, as opposed to looking very short term and saying, well, if we really screw our vendors and try and pay them as little as possible, regardless of the impact on them and their community, we can deliver more money to the shareholder. That's an option, and a lot of businesses do that. But that's at some point, that ability to continue to pull levers that screw one group in order to benefit another is just such a zero-sum mentality. And it's thinking, well, there's a scarcity mindset, and there's only so much to go around. I think we are learning that that's not true. How do we become more creative? How do we think more long-term? How do we really understand the needs of all of the stakeholders and figure out, all right, how can we create wins for everyone? And that may not be possible every time, but to not even challenge ourselves as leaders and ask the question and think about it, it's just a huge missed opportunity.
And is this, you got small businesses struggling to survive, and then you've got mature businesses. Can a smaller business, as they're getting up and running, can they look at conscious capitalism as something that's realistic?
I think so. Absolutely. Will they be able to do super long-term range planning and make sure that their vendors and suppliers are being paid a premium, or perhaps have some of the advantages that a more mature business that maybe is throwing off a healthy margin on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis? Yeah, I mean, an entrepreneur or a startup might have to think way more short term as they're getting going. But that doesn't absolve them of the responsibility, or frankly the opportunity, to think about, all right, what are going to be the founding DNA elements of the way we are going to operate? And are we going to be ruthless mercenaries in our approach to business, or are we going to build something that is more akin to a community and a group of stakeholders that we want to really pay attention to make sure as we build this business, we do it in a way that is very mindful of all of the people that we're going to be relying on and who are going to expect us to do the right thing. So mature businesses, I don't know that they're as safe as we think they are either, right? You've got young startups and early entrants into industries and different segments that are shaking things up. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody can do it.
Yeah, like at Baintree, as we are, small company of 10, But what I've put in place every quarter is one of the employees gets to pick something that they're passionate about, and then we do a give back, whether it's feed my starving children or setting up some type of water drive in the summer and involving the clients and letting them feel that we're all working together. Good friend of ours is one of the leaders at Habitat for Humanity, so that's one area that we're going to put together in the near future for both the employees as well as clients. Come on out. We're going to spend the weekend, and we're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to build, and we're going to have something that's going to be sustainable and used for a family for many, many years. So those are little things that companies can do if they don't have maybe the type of capital that's coming in or the type of expertise or employees that can strictly focus on that. So it's empowering your employees, and they love it because then they come to the table and they know it's on them, and we know it's going to be something that they're passionate on, and then they're going to spearhead it. They're going to have, sometimes they invite their friends and their family, and it becomes that environment that breeds upon itself.
Oh, it's a great way to build community, right? I mean, businesses at least most of them, unless it's completely virtual, businesses have homes, right? And they operate inside of communities where we live, work, and play. And so to make a positive contribution in some way, big or small, I mean, it's everybody has that opportunity.
We were chatting before the show, and we talked about technology, the good of it, but then how it's going back to your disconnection, right? So what can businesses do when we look at Slack and we look at WhatsApp and we look at all these different things that are there in Trello and Monday now and things of that nature, that it makes it where we're not talking to our employees? Somebody who's down the hall or really next to you, here they are, and I'm going to Slack them.
Right.
Slack has been so helpful for us, but I can also see where that can be a detriment to actually having conversations. So what can you tell a business owner to do on that, to be careful on, using technology for efficiency, but to be careful with what it's doing to your culture?
I think it's as simple as, I know maybe simple is the wrong word, but paying attention to opportunities for connection. There's a number of things that a business can do to make sure that the people who are showing up and spending 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day with one another are actually building relationships. And it's interesting to me, and I don't know if I've always thought this way or if this has just been something that has sort of come on like a freight train for me in the past handful of years. This notion that work and life has always been separate, right? We don't bring our personal lives into work, and we do our best not to bring our work lives to our homes. That's like, that whole construct it's been shattered. And so, you hear a lot about businesses want their teammates and their employees to show up and be their whole person. I don't even know that we know what that means yet. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But if we're going to sort of lead with that kind of a mentality, then we're going to need to create time and space for connection opportunities. Gallup, the Gallup organization, has been studying employee engagement since at least since 1996, when they launched their famous Q12 survey, which measures the health of the global as well as the American workforce based on their engagement study. And one of the top 3 criteria of the 12 questions of the Q12 survey, I believe it's a statement. It's like, do I have a best friend at work? And year in, year out, what they have found is whether or not someone has a best friend at work is one of the most important leading indicators as to whether or not they're going to be engaged with the organization and engaged in the work. So there's something there about whether or not we feel a sense of connectivity to the people that we're working with. Now, I'm not saying you've got to have a whole room full of best friends. That's just unattainable, right? That's not going to happen. But year in, year out, if they're saying that the depth of connection you feel is an important indicator as to how you feel about the work you're doing, and perhaps the length of time that you're going to stay, the amount of discretionary effort that you're going to bring to you or bring with you to the work that you're going to do. Why would leaders not work at fostering an environment where people can connect? Another recent data point that I think is fascinating, this is recent, maybe is a bit of a stretch, but back in 2012, Google launched their Project Aristotle initiative, where they wanted to find out what are the ingredients that are absolutely necessary that lead to consistent high-performing teams. And after a 2-year study, like 180 teams across Google, mostly engineering teams, but I think it was a mix of engineering and sales teams, 2/3 engineering, 1/3 sales, what they found was that psychological safety, the sense of, if you and I are colleagues, how how willing are we to take risks in front of one another? How willing are we to be vulnerable with one another? That essence of psychological safety, if I make a mistake or I raise my hand because I don't know the answer to a question or I need your help, that I don't feel like you're going to take advantage of my temporary ineptness to solve a problem. You're not going to take advantage to advance your own career at my based on my inability to do something. Well, in order to even feel vulnerable, in order to take risks, I think like a necessary ingredient to that is, do we even feel do I feel connected to you? So what can leaders do to create an environment where human connection can happen? It could be done in a variety of ways. It can be done in new hire orientation. It can be done in every team meeting where you simply set aside 5 to 10 minutes to create an opportunity to do a check-in, to do some sort of a connection where people can talk about the things that are really important and happening in their lives right now. And that might be taboo for some because we want to leave life at the door and not bring it to work, but who are we kidding? Yeah. We can't check part of who we are and forget that if I'm dealing with a family member who's sick or a teammate who's sick. Like, that's real. And I can't just, at least I can't modularize that away and pretend like it's not going on when I come to work.
I mean, a good leader has empathy. I mean, I guess, there's powerful leaders out there that are psychopaths. They were the true definition, where they're able to run over people and build their company. But at the end of the day, that's a culture that's destined for failure. In most cases.
Yeah.
Sometimes
it's not a culture that I want to be a part of.
No.
It's interesting, though, because some people do. Some people just, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But
as long as they know.
As long as they know.
Into.
Yeah.
As we close up here, I mean, if you were to think, who do you think would be a better employee? Rambling Rose or Stella Blue? If you were to hire one of them.
I don't even know how to judge that. I would say based upon the sort of more upbeat nature of Ramble on Rose, I would go with Ramble on Rose. But there would be a time and a place for the sense of empathy, not that Ramble on Rose wouldn't have it, that a Stella Blue would bring.
I feel like Rose would bring a little bit more creativity,
some
more passion, more energy. But maybe Stella's your steady third baseman who comes to work every day. She doesn't cause a lot of problems.
Probably not,
except when love comes involved, and then it becomes a whole shit show.
It could be.
Well, that's good. So we covered a lot today. For the listeners, being a leader or working for a company where you have the common belief, the culture, and you shouldn't just work for a paycheck, especially in today's world. So the leaders that are out there, things like you had mentioned, huddle up, have quick one-on-ones with your team, and really focus on understanding the pulse of what you're building, not just the pulse of the revenue or the client or the customer, bringing that all together. Easier said than done.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you need professionals that will go in and help you get outside of your box. The one thing I think that's important is maybe off-sites.
Absolutely. Off-sites, on-sites, all of it, right? Just creating opportunities that might feel foreign to what the normal workflow is. But create those opportunities for connection. And I know we're trying to wrap here, but loneliness is a real thing. And the amount of connection that we use technology for is really, really good on the productivity and efficiency side. But the question that I am constantly asking myself is technology, is it becoming a surrogate for real human connection? And I'm fearing that it is. And it sort of coincides with, there was a recent Cigna study. I think they did it with UCLA, or it might have been UC Berkeley. I apologize, but more than 50% of Americans, based upon the research that they did, answered the question, do you have at least one meaningful social interaction each day? And more than 50% of Americans said no. So, the impact that loneliness has on us is pretty profound. I mean, we're social creatures by nature. Connection is part of what we need to adapt and survive. And if 50% of Americans aren't getting some kind of connection that we need for adapting and surviving on a daily basis, how many days in a row can you go before that really starts to weigh on you? And you go to work, and are you performing at your best? Probably not.
And then you're going home and you're swiping left or swiping right or swiping up, and you're living, vicariously through all these other people.
Yeah.
And then you're questioning, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And you're not having those friendships. I don't think you need a whole bunch. You don't need
No.
30 friends, but
No.
having those core
Just a few.
that provide you
Yeah.
that peace of mind, that sanity, those experiences, being able to share. And I think that's what so many are missing. Some have a lot of the circle, but there's no real true connection.
Yeah.
And so that in itself, and a lot of it is that technology where we feel that constant weighing down on us, right?
Yep.
It's hard trying to just put the phone away for the weekend. That's why I like, sometimes going to a place hiking where there's
no connection.
technology.
Yeah, you can't.
It
It
feels
won't
weird.
work.
You start shaking a little bit, but then you start feeling at ease and peace.
Yep.
And that's what I think a lot of people are lacking, and that's where things like meditation and yoga and things like that can get you grounded and get you centered.
Yep.
Can help you be a better person, better
Yeah.
employee, better husband.
Yeah, it is hard to fight the dopamine hit we get by checking into our phones and that instant gratification. I mean, it's real. It is real. Yeah. It's very, very
They're
real.
messing with us, It's true. That's the new drug. It's the new opioid issue. So anyway, we covered a lot.
We
going
did.
back to what the Dead has done, and they continue to do. But they created an industry. They created a culture. They created a brand. They took care of their people. They worked in unison, didn't think they were better than anybody else. And now, 50 plus years later, they're still rocking and rolling, and they're doing their thing.
It is pretty crazy to think about that, the institution that is the Grateful Dead. I mean, there's a band whose unspoken leader, as most would say, died in 1995. So what is that? 15 years? No,
20,
oh my God, 25
24,
years
yeah.
ago. 24 years ago.
25, yeah.
It would be 25 years ago. And they're, maybe it's just the bubble we live in. They seem to me to be as relevant as they ever were.
Well, it helps too with having Sirius, the Grateful Dead channel
Sure.
that keeps continuing on. I know you had the fortune to take your daughters to a show recently.
Yep.
Something I haven't done yet, but she hears it enough where it's not just, Daddy, your music. She's, it starts ingraining in her, and I'm hoping as time goes on, she'll really start appreciating that in other music. Whether it be the Beastie Boys or certain things of that nature. But that was for you, that experience.
It was awesome. It was super cool to go. I mean, it's something I never thought I would ever do. But to go, because they, both my girls, they're teenagers now, and my wife and I, we contemplated, like, do we really want to expose them to the shenanigans that can happen and often do happen at a concert in general, regardless of who it is. But we've done a really good job, at the risk of sounding overly confident in our parenting skills, of teaching them right from wrong, and they really enjoyed themselves, and it was a lot of fun. And they've been listening to it their whole lives because I've been listening to it for their whole lives, and for them to see it live, and they both, I have two girls, they just think John Mayer is obviously, drop dead gorgeous. So we're excited to see him perform live. And it was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, he definitely is bringing a new class of fan, definitely.
Sure.
Did you walk him through Shakedown Street?
We did.
What did they ask you about Daddy? Why is somebody taking a balloon and sucking down?
They were very interested in the whole nitrous balloon thing, and we explained that's typically what you would get at the dentist if they were doing some sort of an oral procedure and had to put you under, and they're like, well, isn't that dangerous? Like, well, yeah, it is very, very dangerous.
So you had them just split one?
Yeah. We figured splitting one would be, absolutely. Yeah,
such a good dad.
The balloons are so big these days, so yeah.
So big. We're just kidding. If there's anybody out there, this is a joke.
Yes, no balloons for my children, not even close.
Yeah, but then to just have them, experience with you.
Yeah,
and them,
it was
cool.
super cool to actually have the conversation, so that we, people that they trust, could explain to them, because they saw people sitting on a curb who were had just taken a decent inhalation of a balloon, and they're watching them like that's crazy. Yeah. Like, what are they doing? Like, well, explaining exactly what they're doing and what the dangers are. Yeah. So I'd rather them hear it from me than one of their friends who's going to maybe not give them the right information.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Yeah.
And that's a whole, parenting is about communicating. We're not going to get into parenting now, but fantastic. So thanks for coming on. This is
my pleasure. Fantastic. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
In the show notes will be ways in how you can contact Brian if you want to, learn on how you can make your workforce more purpose-based and connecting the employees and connecting to that higher power of whatever it is that you're striving for. So I think you're doing fantastic work. Keep it up.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And
thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And stay tuned for a new episode later this month of Your Wealth and Beyond. Happy planning, everybody. Thanks so much.